All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating and, yeah, pretty controversial narrative from a set of historical sources. It's a story about a deep connection between one of Islam's most pivotal early figures, the Caliph Omar, and the Jewish traditions of his time. So, what was the deal here? Was the second Caliph of the Muslims, Umar ibn al-Khattab, just a friendly neighbor to the Jewish scholars he knew, or was there something more going on? Was he, in a way, a student? The sources we're digging into today make a pretty bold claim that this relationship went way beyond just casual chats.
Now, to really get this, we have to go back in time. This whole story doesn't even start with Umar as the caliph. Nope, we're talking way earlier, back when the prophet was still alive. And it begins with Umar's consistent fascination with Jewish scriptures, a fascination that, let's just say, raised a few eyebrows at the time.
So picture this. Umar is described as this regular face at the local Jewish schools. Turns out, his land was conveniently located right on the path, so it was easy for him to just drop in, listen to their teachings, and get into discussions. And what really got him hooked, what caught his attention, was this feeling that he was hearing powerful echoes of the Quran in their Torah.
And this wasn't just a one-way street. The feeling was mutual. I mean, check out this quote that the sources attribute to the Jewish leaders themselves. They're basically saying, "You're different. You're not like the others who give us trouble. We feel safe with you." That's a huge deal. It points to a really unique level of trust and comfort.
And it gets even more personal than that. We're not just talking about general good feelings. In one report, Umar actually calls a member of the Qurayza tribe a brother of mine. Think about that. And this brother would apparently sit and write down parts of the Torah for him. That speaks volumes, doesn't it? Okay, so things are going well, right? Umar is learning, building bridges, but all of this intellectual curiosity was apparently headed for a collision course. And not just with anyone, but with the Prophet Muhammad himself. So here's the moment it all comes to a head. An enthusiastic Umar, really excited about what he's found, brings a copy of the Torah he had transcribed to the Prophet. You can almost feel his eagerness, right? He's thinking, hey, this is great. This can add to what we know. Yeah, that's not how it went down. According to these accounts, the Prophet's reaction wasn't just disinterest. It was anger. We're told his face turned red as he shot back at Omar, asking him, "Are you confused about it?" The point couldn't be clearer. The message he delivered was complete, white and pure, and didn't need any footnotes. And then comes the final powerful statement to really hammer it home. He says, "If Moses were alive among you, he would have no option but to follow me." Wow. I mean, that's a mic drop moment, right? It's a definitive statement about the finality of his own mission. The lesson for Omar was unmistakable. Okay, let's jump forward in time. Umar is now the caliph, the leader. You'd think after a warning like that, he might, back off a bit. But that's not what these sources say. In fact, his interest seems to continue. And now, a new character enters the scene who's going to be a total game changer. And that figure is a man named Ka'b al-Akhbar. Now, Ka'b was no small fry. The sources describe him as a big-deal rabbi from Yemen, a real expert in the scriptures. And when he converts to Islam during Umar's reign, he doesn't just fade into the background. He becomes a central figure, a trusted advisor right in the caliph's inner circle.
And just look at the kind of stuff Umar was supposedly asking him about. It's everything. He's asking about his own legitimacy, like, am I a king or a proper caliph? He's asking for prophecies, for theological deep dives, even for military advice about Iraq. According to these accounts, Ka'b's influence was incredibly wide-ranging.
So, where does this all lead? Well, according to this narrative, this advisor-caliph relationship is about to play out on a massive historical stage, the moment the Muslims conquered Jerusalem. So when Umar makes his historic journey to Jerusalem to accept its surrender, who's right there with him? Ka'b al-Akhbar. Just let that sink in for a second. A former rabbi advising the caliph during one of the most pivotal moments. And he wasn't just a bystander. He was an active participant, helping to find sacred locations and influencing decisions that would literally shape the holy city, including allowing Jews to return. And this is where we see a fascinating moment of tension. They're debating where to build the new mosque. Ka'b suggests a spot behind the sacred rock, which would cleverly combine the Muslim and Jewish directions of prayer. Umar immediately rejects it, flat out accusing him of trying to sneak Jewishness back in. But here's the real kicker. At the very same time he's saying this, he's relying on Ka'b's knowledge just to know where the sacred rock is in the first place. It's such a telling moment. But the story doesn't end with buildings and politics. The sources we're looking at argue that the biggest, most lasting legacy of this relationship was actually theological. The claim is that this is the period when a wave of stories from outside Islam started to find their way into the faith's tradition. There's a specific term for this you need to know: Israeliyat. It basically refers to all those narratives and legends from Jewish and sometimes Christian traditions. Think of them as stories that help, well, flesh out the details of events or prophets that are only mentioned briefly in the Quran. And the argument is, this is when that blending really took off. So you might be wondering, how did this happen? Well, the narrative here suggests a kind of perfect storm. On one hand, you have a restriction on the writing down of the prophet's own sayings. On the other, you have these incredibly charismatic storytellers like Ka'b being given an official platform in the prophet's own mosque. The argument is that these new, exciting stories rushed in to fill that vacuum, and over time, they just got absorbed into the tradition. And that brings us to maybe the most startling claim of all from these sources. You know Umar's famous title, Al-Faruq, the one who distinguishes right from wrong? Well, the claim is that this title didn't come from the prophet. It came from the Jewish scholars. They were apparently so impressed by his sense of justice that they were the ones who first called him that. So there you have it. We've just walked through a specific narrative from these historical sources, a story that points to a really deep, and some would say world-changing influence on a key figure in early Islam. And it leaves you with a pretty big question to chew on, doesn't it? Just how much can one leader's personal friendships, their own curiosity, how much can that really go on to shape the future of an entire world religion?